Okay, so here's my update on the passage of the one big beautiful bill. I can't do a Trump imitation, there's so many good ones. If you haven't seen my rant on my thoughts on the one big beautiful bill before it was even passed, I'll link that video at the end of this one. But let me just start out by saying I am not knocking the president. I am not knocking the administration for what they're trying to do. I think what they're trying to do is admirable to stop the slow decline of the United States economy and get us back on a path of prosperity. I think that's what we all want. But each of us has our own opinion on how best to make that happen. So the one big beautiful bill, it passed on July 4th. Well, it passed before July 4th. It was signed into law. Pomp and circumstance and fanfare and parties and everything. That's great. That's wonderful. But what does it mean to you and I, that segment of people, millions of people who are age 62 to age 65, right? So I'm now narrowing it down, who are not retired, but still working, whether it's a part-time job or a full-time job, and would love to retire, but have made the decision maybe not to retire fully, maybe to take Social Security, maybe to wait till 65. There's a group of people like me between the ages 62 and 65 who don't qualify for Medicare, but who have taken early Social Security. That's me. And if that's you, please let me know. So what does this bill mean to you and I specifically? Well, my rant on that first video was the president's promise, a campaign promise that was shown in the media over and over again, no tax on Social Security. I mean, he didn't mince words. He said it right out loud, no tax on Social Security. That got people's ears perked, right? Because each segment of the population is interested in different parts of the bill. I was most interested in that. And there was a second part of the bill that I was most interested in because, as you know, I work part-time and I am a delivery man for a pizza company. Well, 50% of my income is tip income. So the second portion of that bill that I paid a lot of attention to was no tax on tips. So I'm excited. I didn't realize until after I posted that video that there was a third element to the one big beautiful bill that should have gotten me excited, was an increase in the standard deduction. So given all of that, given that I'm taking Social Security early, working part-time, and am filing married jointly, there are millions of people like me out there, and they're not paying attention. No fault of their own. I happen to be an economic nerd. I love this stuff. I have a financial background. So when the bill was passed, first thing I wanted to know was, all right, what about no tax on Social Security? Well, people got mad at me because I said, how do you know when a politician is lying? He opens his mouth or his lips are moving, something to that effect. Well, it turns out President Trump couldn't do what he wanted to do because of a process in the reconciliation of the bill. I don't get all of that stuff, right? And when I ask you what time it is, don't explain to me how the clock works, just tell me. So what ended up happening was he couldn't fulfill that broad promise of no tax on Social Security, but what he did do was give a sizable increase in the standard deduction for seniors, which now I reckon is defined specifically as 65 and over. You get an increased standard deduction that will make 88% of people over the age of 65 receiving Social Security benefits eligible to have no tax, federal income tax on their Social Security benefits. Okay? What about us 62-year-olds? What about from 62 to 65? Sorry, no bueno. It's not going to work because we are not considered seniors. However, I can go to McDonald's and get a senior coffee. So if you're over the age of 62, but not quite at 65, and you're getting Social Security, nothing for you. If you're over 65 and you filing the standard jointly and you get that increased standard deduction, good for you. Problem is that bill is scheduled, that legislation is scheduled to sunset in 2028, which happens to be the same year that President Trump finishes his term. So keep an eye on that. But for tax years 25, 26, 27, and I'm thinking 28, you'll have the opportunity to take that higher standard deduction and have a reduction in the tax that you would all probably pay on your Social Security. So that's good. The second thing, so I've talked about tax on Social Security, the standard deduction, But the third thing, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about this for us 62 to 65 group, is health insurance. So if you are not part of an employer's plan and you are not age 65, then you need to go to what's called the Affordable Care Act marketplace to find insurance, which millions and millions of people are doing. And based on your household income, you will receive a tax credit to afford the premiums for these ACA plans. And the reason you have to have a tax credit is because they are so expensive, right? And they're high deductible health plans. For example, you could pay $1,800 a year, a month, right? Close to, what's that, 20 grand over a year in health insurance premiums, but still have a high deductible health plan, which means that you're on the hook for the first minimum $7,500 of covered expenses. And then it's cost sharing. It may be an 80-20, it may be a 50-50. I haven't seen a plan that will cover 100% of all expenses after you meet the deductible. I think those were basically dinosaured last year. My wife and I had one, and we went to reapply this year, couldn't find it. Insurance companies say, yeah, we don't offer that anymore. But what we do offer is a plan that's not nearly as good as the one you have for more money. So, based on our household income, and it's the same thing for you, there is an income cap to how much the credit would be based on your household income, but it's a very high. This is not a welfare program. This is the way that the government helps people that are not on a sponsored plan through their employer or a government plan like Medicare afford health insurance. Well, if health insurance is that expensive, we need to fix it. We need to fix the health care, and I know that Kennedy is trying to do this, but come on, man, $1,800 a month for two people, and then you have to come up with the first $7,500? So my wife and I just consider it a catastrophic health plan, right? We don't, there are, under the ACA, annual physicals and preventive care will still be covered. We don't want to use it. Matter of fact, can you think of an insurance policy you own right now that you can't wait to use? No. So what happens? And the reason I'm going on this diatribe is we don't know what's going to happen. Are the subsidies going to be eliminated? Are the subsidies going to be reduced dramatically for those who are receiving tax credits under this provision? And if that's the case, well, that means more out-of-pocket expense for policies that you and I both know are only going to get more expensive. End result are more and more people are going to go uninsured, which defeats the whole purpose of the Affordable Care Act. And many, many people in the age group that I'm in, 62 to 65, are going to be walking around uninsured. Good luck with that. So we don't know what we're going to do. Actually, we do. We have a plan, my wife and I, because we are Christians and we've been on a Christian health sharing plan in the past. We're going to relook at that, right? Because we don't want to go without insurance, because then that just leaves the burden of paying to somebody else. But we're going to have to wait till the end of this year to see what impact the discussion about the reduction in the credits is going to have in our personal situation. So just to wrap it up, if you're between 62 and 65, you don't qualify for the no tax on Social Security. If you're on the ACA marketplace plan and you're receiving some type of tax credit, be on guard. That tax credit may be severely reduced or eliminated. Pay attention to what's happening as you do your healthcare planning for 2026. If you're in a part-time job like me and you're receiving tip income, good news, right? Half of my income is tips, so that will be exempt from federal tax. I live in a state tax-free, income tax-free state, but I'll still have to pay Social Security payroll taxes on that income. It's only income tax-free from a federal standpoint. The good news is that the 2017 tax bill that President Trump unveiled in his first go-around, those tax rates are made permanent. So now if you're in a 10 or a 12%, a lot of Americans in my situation are in a 12% or a 22% tax bracket. You can count on those not going up. The tax bracket's not going up. If you make more money and creep into a next bracket, that's on you. But you won't have to worry about your income tax going up on the same level of income that you've earned, if that makes sense. That's somewhat comforting when you're doing your tax planning. What else do I have to share with you? So again, I just want to make sure you understand I'm not coming at this from a political standpoint. I don't disagree with what the administration's trying to do economically. What scares me, and I won't unravel this because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but if you're watching this long, you need to know, part of the One Big Beautiful Bill is a increase in the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Let that sink in for a second. Because if you and I were running our household on credit cards and our income was decreasing or it wasn't keeping up with the cost of living or the pace of inflation, and we went to our credit card company and said, hey, can you increase my credit limit by $5,000? They would probably say, I think you're a little overextended now. For us to give you that money may not be in our best interest, but if we do give you that money, we're going to charge you an exorbitant rate of interest that mobsters would blush. You know, mobsters, not monsters, but they could be the same thing. So I just understand that a $5 trillion increase means we're going to have to borrow more money. And what happens when we borrow more money? We go into deeper debt. We're in $37 trillion of debt right now. We have a deficit. The debt and the deficit are two different things. The debt is 37 trillion. The deficit is scheduled to go, if I'm not mistaken, close to that 5 trillion mark over the next 2 or 3 years. So I want to leave you on a happy note. Today is a beautiful day. The sun is shining. There are provisions for the 62 to 65-year-old crowd that really are good. So congratulations on that. But I just don't see this bill as solving the problem. And I don't see the problem ever being solved. Because quite frankly, I said it in my first video, I think politicians don't have the political will to do what's necessary to bleed us to the point where we're more stable. I just don't think so. I know that people like me, you know, we paid into our Social Security, we expect it to come because we were told it would. One of the biggest expenses next to the interest on the debt are, they call them entitlements. I don't think Social Security is an entitlement. You're not entitled to your 401k that you paid into or your IRA that you paid into. I paid into Social Security. That's not an entitlement. But if the reductions in those programs are not made going forward, we ain't getting any better. But that's okay. We take it one day at a time, right? In our age group, you know, most of it's behind us, a little bit is ahead of us. So we enjoy what's in front of us right now. And we pray for a healthy tomorrow. There's nothing that we can do about yesterday. And I know I've shared this with you in a previous video. I think the movie was Gumball Rally back in the 70s, where the Italian race car driver jumps in the front seat of the car, rips the rear view mirror off, and he says, what is behind me is no important. So keep that thought in mind, okay? Keep smiling. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with Popsie Guy. I'd really appreciate some comments, a like, maybe even consider subscribing. It would really help the channel. But until we get back together again, stay calm and carry on. Bye-bye.